Hello. Welcome to today's webinar event. My name is Joshua, and I'm going to be your presenter today. We're here to talk about fund accounting defined. Before we get started on our topic here, it's promptly 1, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Welcome to all of you. A few things. If you've got a single monitor set up, click the little red arrow on the sidebar of your webinar control panel. That allows you to minimize that webinar control panel, get it out of the way. Or if you've got a dual monitor set up, just drag it off to your second desktop, get it out of the way. Allows you to get the full visual effect of the presentation. If you have questions, please type those into the questions portion of the webinar. I will do my best to keep an eye on those, and we'll see what we can't do to get those answered. Please keep the questions on topic, folks. So we're here to talk about kind of some fund accounting basics. We're not really here to talk about setting up the chart of accounts or, what your chart of accounts looks like. If you've got questions that are more geared towards your specific data or setup, please call our support staff at 800-533-5227. Our technicians are available and happy to talk with you about that at any time. Well, during support hours, of course. The event is taken from our A101 workbook, pages 2 through 4. That's what I'm using as my guide for the event today. So, if you're wanting to know where we're gathering this information from, it's from our A101 workbook, page 2 through 4. Well, I do also like to point out we are recording today's webinar event, but we already do. If we go to our support center page on our website and we type in the keyword fund here, come on, Josh, put your typing hat on there and click search. It'll bring up, fund accounting basics, fund theory, right here, fund accounting defined, which is basically the same topic that we're talking about today. It was just recorded and released in September of 2017. But frankly, folks, it's the same exact topic, same workbook, same page numbers. The topic hasn't changed. We're just showing it on a different version of Church Windows today. So if you don't need to revisit this topic or would like to, before we can get the recording of today's event out on our website here within the next week or 10 days, you can go to the support center and watch the video that most likely I did 2 years ago or more on this same topic, okay? The fund theory document that's right here, the fund theory accounting, is essentially the same thing. It's just a little bit worded differently. It's a PDF file, but it essentially talks about the same exact topic, okay? So you don't need to purchase the workbooks in order to get essentially what we're describing here today, okay? I'm going to end the topic wherever I am at 20 minutes after. We may not even go that long. But wherever we are, I will stop wherever I am and we'll wrap things up and get you on with your day here. So, all right. So the very top of that page 2 of that document talks about accounting Church Windows is a fund accounting software package for churches and nonprofit organizations. It coordinates or links over and syncs over with our information from donations and brings that into accounting, and also our payroll module. Okay, so those 2 modules link over and those transactions post into our accounting system, as well as all of the transactions that you post, bills and payments and income and journal entries and everything else that you post in your accounting system. So it's why Church Windows is labeled an integrated modular system is we've got different database programs, notably donations and payroll, that transfer seamlessly into and post seamlessly into our books in accounting. In addition to all of that, of course, the accounting module allows you, income and expense tracking, budget and check writing. It also provides fund accounting financial statements along with other valuable reports. Okay, it is a very powerful system. Okay. The first and foremost important thing to understand about fund accounting and Church Windows accounting system particularly is what defines a fund. Okay. So in basically, 2 short sentences there, it really accurately describes what a fund is. A fund is described as an accounting entity set up to fulfill a designated purpose to keep all its financial transactions separate from other funds, and it generally has its own sources of income and its own set of expenses, and the value of the balance is shown in the fund balance account. Okay? 3 sentences, excuse me. So it's really important that you kind of commit that definition of what a fund is in your thinking, because it really does help you understand, 1, what a fund does, and 2, when it may become appropriate that you may need to set up a new fund or add new funds to the chart of accounts. Okay? As the below that box on that description talks about, it says most churches will have a general fund or an operating fund, a fund that manages the day-to-day operations of the church. And if we kind of steer our focus to our chart of accounts here and we collapse things down and we expand our funds, we do see we've got a general operating fund, again, manages the day-to-day operations of the church, both from the income side and the expenses. But some other examples of some other funds are described there below. You know, some churches will have a building fund and missions and outreach and memorials and youth and, you know, music, or, again, I've seen it all, folks. I've been doing this for a long time. So, you know, I've literally seen chart of accounts that, you know, where there are funds on it. I've never seen it on any other chart of accounts. There's no restrictions in terms of what funds you can set up. The church can set up and add the most obscure fund. It doesn't matter. As long as we've set it up for its designated purpose and it has the appropriate components, Church Windows does not care. Okay? So those are just some examples of some funds. Okay? As the second bullet establishes, when you're setting up or establishing a fund, you are in essence restricting the monies to that designated purpose of that fund. Okay? A fund by designation or by definition is a designation of money that is being allocated and set aside for a specific purpose. Okay? The third bullet point there, 2 factors decide whether money needs to be placed into its own fund. And I think this is then the next most important thing to grasp from what we're talking about today. 2 factors decide whether money needs to be placed into its own fund. 1, will there be money that carries it forward into the new year? Really important. Okay? The reason being is because our income and expenses, our treasurer's report accounts, and this is true for virtually all accounting systems, folks, those income and expenses do not carry balances forward. Okay? They revert back to a 0 beginning balance in our next or new accounting year. So if we want to track balances forward into an upcoming or into a next accounting year, income and expenses on their own won't do. We have to then consider looking at a fund. Number 2, do you want to report on the monies separately from other fund monies? Okay? So when the answer to either or both of these questions is yes, you need a fund. Okay? And again, funds can always be added or set up as, and added to the chart of accounts at any time. Okay? Finally, that final bullet point is a fund is not always money. Some churches will set up fixed asset fund for recording the value of the church building, grounds, content, land, etc. Okay? Physical assets that the church owns as opposed to monetary assets, bank accounts, checking accounts, savings. Those are assets. But some churches will set up fixed assets because they want to record what the actual value of the church itself is. Okay? Bottom of page 2, sub-funds. Church Windows accounting does support sub-funds. And a common example, as it describes there, is a main memorial fund under which we have a variety of sub-funds, undesignated memorials, individual memorials. And as we see on our chart of accounts here, if we expand that, I can't zoom in, folks, I'm sorry. And we've got our main memorial fund balance. We've got our separate individual memorials, including our undesignated memorial, one that's kind of our general memorial fund, ones where it's just kind of holding monies that aren't specific or designated for a particular purpose, but maybe for general memorials. Okay? When we click on our memorial fund and we go to our balance tab to the right, this balance tab tells us is how much of all of our balance memorial funds collective total balance is. Okay. So, you know, as of July 2000 as of March 2018, all of these funds have maintained a consistent balance collectively of $40,905. Okay. When I want to look at any one of the individual memorial funds, I simply highlight that, steer my focus to the balance tab, and there's how much I have in that individual memorial. We're now beginning to see the beauty of what fund accounting can do for you. Okay. As we're moving on to page 3 here, components of a fund. In order for a fund to function or operate properly, we have to have the 3 following accounts. We need to have the fund balance account, the 300 account that we're seeing here, and we need to have at least one income account and one expense. We have to have a means of being able to flow and credit new income into that fund, and we have to have a means of expensing money out of that fund. A better way to perhaps look at this would be to jump over to our Tree View tab. So if we go to our Tree View here on the right, you know, we see our funds listed on the right side here under our Tree View, and under it, when we click the plus sign next to say General Operating, we see income accounts and expense accounts, building fund, income and expense, education building, mission fund, etc. They all have an income and an expense. In the case of like our General Operating Fund, we've got a dozen income accounts and maybe 3 or 4 dozen expenses. Other funds may only have, say, 1 account. You know, like under missions, say, I've got a couple. So I've got 2 income accounts linked to missions, and I've got 2 expenses. Some funds, folks have just 1 income and 1 expense. But that's all it takes for the fund to be able to properly move money into it and properly expense money out of it. Okay? The Tree View tab on the chart of accounts is a really great way to see how our chart of accounts is constructed with regards to those income and expenses as they relate to their particular fund. Okay? All right, so ratio of assets to funds in the middle of page 3. Having a different funds does not mean the money needs to be stored in a different place. Okay? The money for each of those entities can be stored in one checking account, or it could be distributed and stored in many different asset accounts. Okay? The choice is yours. Okay? How you define your chart of accounts determines that's the case. As we've seen before already on this before by looking at the balance tab, it's by looking at the fund balance account that you know how much money that fund has, regardless which bank account it sits in. Okay? Coincidentally, and I stress the word coincidentally, I might also substitute that, or, you know, if I were getting out my thesaurus, I would say, by design, there may be one asset account that just happens to contain the monies that belong to a particular fund. So we've got a general checking account. It exclusively represents the activity in our general fund. We've got a building savings account, and that balance of that exclusively handles the activity and the money that sits in our building fund. Okay? If your church chooses to set up your chart of accounts, it is important, really important, that you understand that that's how you choose to design the chart of accounts, and not because Church Windows requires it that way. Okay? Accounting, I mean, requires it that way. I've seen a chart of accounts where the church has one account, it's a main checking account, and they've got 15 funds. And all of their money is stored in one particular checking account, and all they have to do is look at their balance sheet or the balance of their fund, going right to the balance tab, and they know anytime throughout the year how much of that particular asset belongs to that particular fund. Okay? So assets and funds are not the same. They are different types of accounts. Okay? I like to kind of tag this. It's not in the printed material, but how I like to say it, share it from my experience standpoint is if the church has a whole lot of assets that were maybe a carryover from prior accounting system that didn't track funds quite so well, the church can look at maybe merging some of those assets and getting it down to more manageable level of assets rather than having so many of them. Okay, that's what the fund accounting system in Church Windows essentially allows you to do. Again, if you choose to have a 1-to-1 ratio of assets to funds, it is the church's and your choice, and not because Church Windows accounting requires it to be that way. Okay. Some examples are shown here at the bottom of page 3 and the top of, and through our page 4 there, where again we've got one checking account, asset account at the top of our balance sheet or our chart of accounts here, and the money is divided. You know, we have a $50,000 balance in it, and it's divided across 5 different funds, as the example shows there. We've got $15,000 in our general fund, and $30,000 in building, and $2,500 in missions, and the remaining balances across the remaining 2 funds. But again, we're looking at our balance sheet essentially. Total asset equals total fund balance. There are no outstanding liabilities, but the same $50,000 is represented equally on both sides of the balance sheet. It's just distributed or broken down into separate funds. Okay. The second example, a little more difficult in in terms of my understanding of the software in terms of how it works, but we might have 2 different asset accounts, a checking and a money market, and we might have part of the general fund monies sitting in the money market and part of it sitting in the checking account, and the same is true for some of those other accounts. It's a little harder to track that, but the system, again, permits that to occur. Okay? The chart of accounts, the designing of the funds, folks, is vitally important to the successful use of Church Windows. You can also find a sample chart of accounts on our website as well. I like to kind of point that out to folks here is that our sample chart of accounts can be found on our website on the Support Center by simply typing in the keyword sample at any time. Might be something to compare your chart of accounts to see, you know, how yours compares to just a simple chart of accounts we've constructed or created. There is no right or wrong chart of accounts, folks. Okay, the one thing I can say about it in terms of the one question we would say about it, or one thing we would say about it, is that if your funds are set up properly and folks are happy with what they're getting on the reports, then your chart of accounts and your funds are set up perfectly. If folks you're hearing grumblings and complaints about the chart of accounts and the funds, then maybe the chart of accounts needs to be revisited. Okay. But you can always add funds at any time throughout the year, okay? All right. So that is our topic for today, folks. Tomorrow we're going to be talking about our chart of accounts wizard and setting up our chart of accounts, considerably more complex and detailed topic. But, you know, hopefully we'll see folks there at that one as well. Let me see. I don't see any questions in the questions. I'm hoping I did a very good job on that today. But I'll give folks a few minutes to type things in there to see, or a couple minutes to see if folks are typing in questions for me. Again, let's go back to our website, and we're going to click on our home page here, go up to the Support Center. You're very welcome, Barbara. Thank you. We go to the Support Center. And again, just by way of showing you here, hours and hours of videos and documents here, folks. So if I type in the keyword sample and I click search, we've got our sample chart of accounts right there, right at the very top. You know, now's the time to talk about this, okay? Folks get really confused by fund accounting and understanding what funds do differently. They know what assets are. They go in and they set up those asset accounts on the chart of accounts. Funds are a little less clear for folks in their thinking, and we hope that this topic on a class like today is more helpful in terms of helping you understand what funds can do, because it's really powerful. I'm being asked, will the balance sheet always show all funds? Well, Diane, yes. I mean, unless you're wanting to like create some custom groups or hide some detail of those funds, then sure. It's going to, you know, but if you're wanting to create some, you know, custom groups, we're not going to talk about that today, but if you want to restrict it to certain funds, you can. Or if you go to like your balance sheet and you go to the detail tab, you can hide the detail of accounts. But in essence, yes. I mean, short of that, or the balance sheet is always going to display all of our funds. We want them to because they balance out with our corresponding assets, or our balance out our assets. Total assets equals total liabilities plus fund balance. So if we want to see those figures and understand what they are and where they come from, we typically want to see them all. Yeah. Occasionally there might be some exceptions, but typically we want to show all those funds. Yeah, if I didn't want to say see my memorial fund breakdown and just my memorial balance, my main memorial fund, I can uncheck that, sure. Good question. All right. Well, I'm not seeing any other questions coming in, folks. It's 2021 after here. If questions come up for you after the webinar event is concluded, please don't hesitate to give us a call on support, 800-533-5227, or you can email questions to us at support@churchwindows.com. We hope it's been helpful, and we'll look forward to hearing from you if you have any questions, and we hope to see everybody at a future Church Windows webinar event. All right. Thank you all. Take care. Bye-bye.